Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is still 4th of January, now it's 7:30 in the evening Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my second update for a day in which I will share all the main news that was reported by Russian media during the day since my first update, and also I will share with you latest report of Russian Defense Ministry on progress of special military operation during the previous 24 hours. Later on today, before end of this working day, of course, I will record and upload on Rumble next episode of Telegram reports program, which is made by me exclusively for Rumble. And this is my attempt to generate additional interest among members of our community towards my Rumble channel. And if you are watching this video on YouTube, please, dear friends, consider to support my work by subscribing on my Rumble channel also, because after all, my channel on YouTube are not monetized and it don't really make any difference how many views my videos will have on YouTube, while on Rumble my channel is monetized. And if our community will grow in numbers on Rumbles and on Rumble, and if views on my updates increase, who knows, sometime in the future, maybe in 6 months time, maybe in a year's time, Rumble may become a significant source of financial support for our project, which is of course immensely important to me to be able to continue this work and further develop this project. So if you can, please consider to subscribe to my Rumble channel. You can see links under this video in description box or in the pinned comment. That's been said, let's talk about news now. And first of all, breaking news for this evening, which is that Kyiv regime did try to conduct large-scale missile strike on Sevastopol city on the Crimean Peninsula. And according to a report of Russian Defense Ministry, 10 Ukrainian missiles have been shot down by Russian air defense systems in area of Sevastopol. Unfortunately, fragments of several destroyed missiles fell into residential areas, and according to reports that I see on different channels, several civilians were wounded. Also, government of Sevastopol, local government, did made statement according to which today's strike on Sevastopol conducted by Kyiv regime was the largest since the beginning of special military operation. Of course, if any additional information will be available in next several hours, I will share it on my Telegram and on my tomorrow's update. That's been said, let's continue with this information, which is also quite interesting. RIA Novosti is reporting about statements that were shared with public by Russian Defense Ministry today. And according to information that we receive, since the beginning of special military operation, Kyiv regime received military aid from 54 different states worldwide, and military aid combined military aid amounted to $203 billion US. $203 billion US, quite a large number, as we can see. And of course, vast majority of military aid was provided by US and some other NATO member states. Also, according to Russian Defense Ministry, since the beginning of special military operation, Kyiv regime was, or in interests of Kyiv regime, was operating orbital grouping of satellites, more than 500 different type of satellites of US and other NATO member states. Among them, 70 satellites are intelligence satellites that were providing and are providing Kyiv regime with intelligence information. Rest of the satellites are commercial ones. And also, according to Russian Defense Ministry, Kyiv regime is actively using more than 20,000 terminals of Starlink satellite communication to have a network of communication for militaries. And well, one may ask question, why Starlink is still operational, why Moscow are not taking steps to neutralize threat from Starlink or from other satellites, especially after we all know, or majority of us know, that Russia has means to neutralize orbital targets. But yet again, I guess Moscow is trying to avoid further escalation with the West because, well, I have no answer really on this question. Of course, Kremlin is not sharing with me its strategies, but question is legit, absolutely legit, because, well, for actions of Starlink and for actions of US and NATO militaries and the private companies also that providing Kyiv regime with intelligence information and means of communication, Russian citizens are paying price, and many Russian citizens are dying. And well, question is definitely legit, why Moscow is not taking steps to neutralize threats from orbital grouping of satellites that are used against Russia. But yet again, who knows what Kremlin's strategy is. Maybe we will see some actions sometime in the future, and exactly that's why this information was shared with public. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, Russian Defense Ministry also did share information today that since the beginning of special military operation, more than 13,000 foreign mercenaries went to Ukraine, most of them from Europe, more than 8,000 of them. Also from Asia, 1,700 mercenaries went to Ukraine to fight on behalf of Zelensky's Nazi and terrorist regime. And from Southern and Northern America, about 2,700 mercenaries went to Ukraine. 6,000 foreign mercenaries have been liquidated or killed during the battles in line of contact, and more than 5,000 mercenaries ran away and left Ukraine. Right now, according to Russian Defense Ministry, about 1,900 foreign mercenaries are remaining in Ukraine and are continuing to fight for Kyiv regime. Also interesting news that foreign states did provide Kyiv regime with more than 1,600 units of missile and artillery systems and more than 200 air defense systems. Also, foreign countries provide Kyiv regime with more than 5,000 units of different type of armored vehicles, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, and so on. And more than 23,000 drones have been provided to Ukraine from foreign countries, by foreign countries. Quite a number, quite impressive numbers. But yet again, despite all the attempts of US and NATO member states to turn the tide in this conflict, they failed. They failed miserably, and it's hard to argue with this, isn't it? Let's continue. And RIA Novosti is reporting that, well, according to official representative of White House, John Kirby, White House or US don't really have any financial means no more to continue military or financial aid for Kyiv regime. Last available sums already have been used, and if US House of Representatives will not vote for Biden's initiative, Biden's military package, combined military aid package for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and for border security, then US will not be able to continue financial support for Kyiv regime. That's yet another attempt from White House, I guess, to pressure US congressmen by making this type of statements that they run out of money, and some Armageddon is happening now. If it will happen now, if Congress will not provide, not allocate another 61 billion for Kyiv regime. Eventually, of course, U.S. Congress will vote for Biden's initiative, and if not 61, then at least few dozen of billion of US dollars will be 30-40 billion dollars will probably be allocated for Kyiv regime, because this is after all last big paycheck for US military industrial complex and US corrupt officials from this whole Ukrainian story, and they're not gonna miss this opportunity. They will use all the influence to make sure that they are receiving this paycheck. Only question is when this will happen. I will say 2-3 weeks time, before end of January, US Congress will probably vote for Biden's initiative and approve it. But yet again, let's see. Even if 40 billion or even 60 billion will be allocated for Kyiv regime, it will, of course, will not change final outcome of this confrontation. Russia already emerged victorious from this conflict with the Western ruling class, but unfortunately more financial and military aid the Kyiv regime will receive, longer this conflict will continue. That's a difference. Let's continue anyway. Andrea Novost is reporting that Washington Post did published interesting article, according to which fighters, Ukrainian military personnel that was participating in military operations in Kherson region, in crossings of the Dnieper River, in talks with journalists with Washington Post, did acknowledge that they had huge losses, and they still have huge losses on the banks of the Dnieper River without basically achieving anything. So we can clearly see now that even Western media outlets are acknowledging that this so-called Ukrainian Kherson offensive also failed miserably, like it failed, this major Ukrainian counteroffensive did fail on Zaporozhye and South Donetsk sector that began on 4th of June of last year, and end up with the total destruction of last strategic reserves of Ukrainian armed forces in Zaporozhye and South Donetsk sectors of the front line. Almost the similar stuff did repeat itself in Kherson direction. And if you remember, I was saying from very beginning that left bank was a trap. I am not military expert, but to me it was obvious that information that was available in open sources were clearly suggesting that Russian side prepared trap for Ukrainian armed forces on the left bank. And if it was obvious to me, then I don't know why Ukraine's general staff didn't realize this. What kind of generals are they? But maybe, yet again, most likely, not just maybe, but most likely, a political decision was made. Zelensky wanted media victory. Zelensky wanted media attention. And, well, he sacrificed at least few more Ukrainian brigades for this media attention. But yet again, this operation on Kherson direction did fail miserably. And Ukrainian soldiers are openly talking about it now with Western journalists. Let's continue. Andrea Novosti reported today that President of Russian Federation Putin signed a decree to give citizenship of Russian Federation to foreigners that sign contract with the Russian Defense Ministry and are participating in special military operation. Well, this is a big deal, I guess, and after this decree, I think we may see waves of foreign citizens that will try to apply for military service in Russian armed forces, because they will know that, you know, they will receive Russian citizenship, which is not that easy to have, to receive. So this is a big deal, and well, let's see in next month or two how this decision of Russian president will influence on numbers of foreign citizens that are volunteering to serve in Russian armed forces. This practice is done by many other countries. Significant number of US military personnel is basically not even citizens of US, and many militaries are applying for or joining military exactly because they want to receive citizenship of US. Other countries also do this type of practice, and well, Russia is no different in this regard, and well, this is I will say a right approach in my understanding, because citizens that will risk their lives, foreign citizens that will risk their lives for Russia, for Russian security, definitely deserve to become citizens of Russia if they want to. Undoubtedly, that's my take on it anyway. RIA Novosti is reporting that new information did become available about recent hacker cyber attack on Ukraine's telecommunications company Kyivstar, and well, one of the heads of this operator did spoke with journalists, and he said that after cyber attack on the company, about 40% of infrastructure of Kyivstar was destroyed. So it was a really sophisticated cyber attack on this company, and especially because heads of this company did stated many times that they had high level security, high level cyber security, but hackers did manage to bypass anyway their security measures and conduct devastating attack on a Kyivstar. This is Ukrainian, of course, Ukrainian operator. So, well, interesting. This may be preview. This story with the Kyivstar may be preview what may happen with the Western operators if relationships between Russia and NATO member states will further escalate. Because, well, according to information that is circulating in internet, this cyber attack on Kyivstar was conducted by hacker groups that are associated with Russia. Not necessarily Russian, but ones that have some sympathies towards Russia. So interesting. Let's continue. RT is reporting that Forbes did write article about US-made battle tanks, US-made M1 Abrams battle tanks, and according to Forbes, it is not clear what Ukraine is going to do with American tanks. Let's read several sentences here. It's not clear what Ukraine is doing with the US-made Abrams M1 main battle tanks that had been provided to Kiev by Washington aimed the conflict with Russia. Forbes has reported the US promised to supply Ukraine with 31 M1 tanks in January 2022 as the country is prepared for its summer counteroffensive, which eventually started in early June. However, Kiev only received the American armor in October, when it became clear that its attempts to advance failed to deliver the desired results. Throughout the summer, the Ukrainians mainly relied on German-made Leopard 2 tanks and the US supplied Bradley fighting vehicles, several of which have been destroyed or captured by Russian military. British Challenger 2 tanks have been used on a limited scale, which with the London officially confirming the loss of one such vehicle. It has been 2 months since ex-American M1s arrived in Ukraine, and 2 months since we'll see any evidence of the tanks. Forbes wrote in an article on Wednesday which Ukrainian brigade would operate the US supplied armor also remains mystery. The outlet wrote, however, rational planners might assign that M1s may be used by 47th Mechanized Brigade, which is currently trying to hold off Russian forces in the strategic village of Avdiivka in Russia's Donetsk People's Republic, and is already armed with Leopard 2s. Well, when it comes to Abrams tanks, of course, I did spoke about this topic several times a few days ago, for example, also, and I did mention that, well, we only see really Leopard 2 tanks on line of contact, and that's why Leopard 2 tanks are constantly destroyed by Russian forces. Challenger 2s have not been seen on the line of contact for a while now, since at least one Challenger 2 was destroyed on the southern sectors. According to some reports, 2 other Challengers also have been destroyed, although we did not see video or photo confirmation of that. And when it comes to Abrams tanks, we did not see those tanks on even close to the line of contact. And the maybe main explanation is that first of all, Challengers and Abrams tanks are too heavy. They are too heavy. I was talking about it even before those tanks was delivered to Kiev regime. Those tanks are just too heavy, and the small bridges on the local rivers on the line of contact, those bridges will be unable to withstand these tanks. That's one big point. Because of this heavy weight, these tanks are almost unusable in raining weather, in autumn or spring. And when it comes to winter time, I mean, Ukraine is a vast country, and in northern Ukraine, weather may be cold enough now, and ground may be solidified, so battle tanks probably can be used. But when it comes to southern Ukraine, well, it's a muddy season still there, and Challengers or Abrams tanks gonna stuck in the mud. And also, by the way, when it comes to Abrams tanks, these tanks have severe issues with the fuel consumption and fuel type, fuel consumption, and the filters for its engines. Filters located under the tank in such a way that in muddy terrain, those filters are basically unusable in hours time, and then have to be removed. So Abrams tank is basically unusable for conditions that Ukrainian armed forces are fighting. That's all, really. And well, we can also add, of course, that Washington and London just don't want to see that their tanks being burned like Leopard 2s are, burning almost on daily basis. That's also a point to make, isn't it? But anyway, no matter what is the case, whenever these tanks will arrive on a zero line, they will be destroyed, they will burn like any other main battle tank does. Simple as that. Also interesting news, RIA Novosti is reporting that, well, former British colonel Hamish de Breton Gordon, in an interview with Talk TV, did said quite interesting stuff, man. This colonel, former member of British Armed Forces, did said that if situation for Ukrainian armed forces become even more desperate, NATO forces will most likely enter this conflict directly, and they will send its troops to Ukraine, because everything else, according to Brett and Gordon, already have been done by NATO to support Kyiv regime. And at one hand, of course, we can dismiss this statement straight away as a pure fantasy, but in other hand, by the way, if we remember that, I mean, let me say this way. As you all know, I did said many times before that in my reading of big picture, after this conflict will end, Ukraine will be divided between its neighbors. Russia will control vast majority of modern Ukraine, and western neighbors of Ukraine that are NATO member states will control western regions of Ukraine, namely Poland, Hungary, Romania. And because these states are NATO member states, of course, if they will send their forces into western Ukraine to establish control over the former territories that used to belong them before Second World War, or in case of Hungary before First World War, then of course this British colonel is correct. Eventually NATO will send its forces into Ukraine. But for what purposes? To fight Russia or to establish control over the western regions of Ukraine? That's a question, because I'm 100% sure that in no circumstances NATO will provoke direct confrontation, direct full-scale confrontation with Russia. It's just not happening, because it will be end of this world as we know it, because of the nuclear capabilities of Russia and the US. So there will be no full-scale war between Russia and NATO. It's impossible. There may be some local-scale skirmishes during the time when Ukraine will be divided, when NATO member states, Poland, Hungary, Romania, with support of other NATO member states, will try to establish control over the western regions. At that time, we may see some skirmishes between Russian and NATO militaries. There may be some misunderstandings, communication lines may broke down, some local scale skirmishes, some accidents may happen. But once sides will resolve all the issues where line of division of Ukraine, or where those lines are that Ukraine will be divided, after that, I guess there will be no issues between the sides, and of course there will be no full-scale war between Russia and NATO. So it depends from which perspective we will take a look on the statement of British colonel. If one will say that NATO will begin war against Russia, that's a false, absolutely mistaken reading of big picture in my understanding. But if one will say that, yes, NATO member states will probably try to establish control over the western regions of Ukraine, then I will agree, because that's what I'm talking about for how many months now, since the beginning of special military operation, even before that. Because I was for years writing that confrontation in Ukraine will eventually take place, or Western ruling class will eventually provoke this conflict, and as a result of it, Ukraine will be divided between Russia and its western neighbors. And exactly that will happen, in my opinion, 99%, and I will just leave slight chance, like 1%, that Kyiv and surrounding regions will remain as a quasi-independent state under the name of Ukraine, landlocked quasi-state. Although, why would Moscow allow this to happen? I have no idea. Anyway, let's continue. This update is quite long, but well, plenty of news, isn't it? And quite interesting ones. Anyway, let's continue. RT is reporting that Israel partially withdraws from Gaza after listening to US, according to Politico, US media outlet. Quite a statement. Let's be clear here. So Israel's withdrawal of troops from Gaza indicates that it is listening to Washington which has long urged West Jerusalem to shift to low-intensity military operations, Politico reported Wednesday. It comes after the Israeli Defense Forces announced last weekend that it would withdraw 5 brigades from combat in Gaza, comprising thousands of soldiers. The IDF decision to reduce its troops' presence in the Palestinian enclave is seen as a signal that Israel is beginning to finally shift away from large-scale bombing and more towards targeted surgical strikes on senior Hamas leaders, as Washington has repeatedly urged aimed a rising civilian death toll among Gazans. Politico reported, citing unnamed U.S. officials. Well, information that IDF is withdrawing some forces from Gaza is correct, but why this step was taken by IDF? Because they want to de-escalate, or because they had these brigades have severe losses and need time to regain battle readiness, or maybe Israeli forces are preparing for even bigger escalation. For example, with Lebanon or Lebanese Hezbollah, there is too many questions, and I think it's too early to call, too early to say that Israel is finally beginning to de-escalate in Gaza. I don't think so. Netanyahu's government don't seems like one that has any adequacy at all. And therefore, if you take into account that Netanyahu and his associates are extremists, well, it's difficult to think that they are capable of some adequate decisions and de-escalation. Most likely, they will further escalate. Although, of course, we all know that Israel heavily depends on U.S. assistance, and well, Washington definitely has word to say in Israeli matters. If Washington orders Netanyahu's government to de-escalate, then I think they will have no choice. But, well, will Washington do so? I don't think so. Because if we take a look at what was going on in the US or in the collective West, I will say probably Israeli secret services have more influence on US politicians and public figures or Israeli lobby than US has influence on Israeli politicians and public figures. Am I wrong? You tell me though. US politicians are afraid to say anything. Most of the US public figures are afraid to criticize, even slightly criticize, criminal actions of Netanyahu and his terrorist government. It's true. It's just true. They are scared to say anything. And not just in the US, but in Europe also. That's a reality. RT is reporting that landlocked African states' port plans have been blocked. This is very interesting information. Maybe some of you are familiar with this situation, but if not, then I will share with you this news. So Somalia has rejected an agreement signed by Ethiopia and Somaliland, claiming it violates the sovereignty of the country. Somalia has rejected the agreement on port access signed by Somaliland and Ethiopia, claiming the deal had no legal authority. The decision followed an emergency cabinet meeting on Tuesday. Somaliland split from Somalia in 1991, but is not internationally recognized as an independent state. A memorandum of understanding had been agreed by Ethiopia Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the President of Somalia Musa Bihi Abdi on Monday, with which provide Addis Ababa with 50-year access to Red Sea port of Berbera and permission to build a naval base. However, Mogadishu, official capital of Somalia, recognized Somalia, rejected the deal outright, with the government spokesman Fatah Jamal insisting Somaliland is a part of Somalia and no deal is valid without Somalia's approval. Well, very interesting development, because Ethiopia is landlocked at this point after Ethiopia and Eritrea did fight between each other, and Eritrea did become independent. And lately, for last several months, tensions are increasing in this region, in this part of African continent. Some experts are even predicting that another war may erupt between Ethiopia and Eritrea, because Ethiopia is desperate to get into the Red Sea because it's landlocked, and Ethiopia wants to become, wants to have access to the sea, and it has two directions. One is Somaliland, and one is Eritrea. I know there is no other way here. And well, unfortunately, things are escalating, and it's quite possible that sometime in the future we will see Ethiopian forces engaged in some military operations against Somali forces or Eritrea forces. Let's hope it will not happen, and Ethiopia and Eritrea will reach some agreement so that Ethiopia will have access to the sea, because it's obvious that Ethiopia will not stop until they will gain access to the sea, and Ethiopia is a major powerhouse in this region. So it's unlikely, absolutely unlikely, that Ethiopian government, current one or any other, will ever stop their attempts to reach the sea. So interesting developments. Interesting developments are taking place there. Let's continue now. RT is reporting that according to S&P, Eurozone recession is likely to happen, which is well, not really surprising, because major economies in Europe are on the brink of recession or in technical recession. So it's obvious that most likely Eurozone will enter recession this year or next. RIA Novosti is also reporting that Russian economy will slow down a little bit in 2024, and GDP will increase only 1.6%, which is still not bad if you take into account all the pressure that was imposed on Russia by collective West. So Russian economy will still in the plus zone. Russian economy will still grow, but will slow down a little bit. If we compare it with current year, this year Russian GDP will grow 2.5, 2.7%. And this is conservative estimates. According to some institutions, financial institutions, Russian GDP may grow this year even 3%, which is, I mean, fantastic result, exactly because of this Western pressure. Also interesting news that may become surprise for many members of our community, that US becomes world's top LNG exporter, according to Reuters. So US, by the way, is a top LNG exporter in the world, number one. Number two is Australia, and the third place is for Qatar. Usually it was Qatar, number one exporter of LNG, but well, as a result of this fracking revolution in the US, of course, US gain momentum. US energy companies gain momentum, and after Western ruling elites provoke conflict in Ukraine, after Russian pipelines were destroyed in Europe, Russian Nord Stream pipelines, and after European states were forced to cut ties with Russia as much as possible, including ties with energy sector of Russia. Of course, demand on LNG increased significantly on the world market because, as I reported yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, Europe this year purchased a record volume of LNG, because they have no access now to Russian pipeline gas, and this significant increase of demand on LNG on the world market, of course, give additional momentum to US companies, US energy companies, and well, they use this opportunity, and they are number one now on this market. Australia is number 2, and Qatar is number 3. So Washington's attack on Nord Stream pipelines did have not just geopolitical behind this attack on Russian Nord Stream pipelines from Biden's administration. There was not just geopolitical interests of the Western ruling class, but one may say some geoeconomical or financial interests can be also clearly seen. And that's the numbers, by the way. That's statistics that says that US is number 1 LNG exporter. And let me read several sentences here. US emerged as the globe's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas for the global market in 2023, Reuters reported on Wednesday, citing tanker tracking and government data. Australia came in second, while Qatar, which ranked first in 22, saw its output drop by 1.9% and slide to third place. According to the reports, US LNG exports hit monthly and annual records last month, with the country exporting 8.6 million metric tons in December alone, to total 88.9 million metric tons in 2023, up 14.7% compared to 2022. According to US government data, Europe remained the foremost destination for US LNG exports last month, accounting for 5.43 million metric tons, or more than 60% of overall shipments. Nearly 70% of US LNG exports were destined for the regions in November. The EU significantly increased its LNG imports last year following the drop in pipeline gas flow from Russia, once its major supplier. Well, as I said, numbers are here, and EU is a major buyer of US LNG, so you know, it is what it is, man. RT is reporting, and I will end this news segment of this update with this interesting information that US team becomes first human to beat Tetris. Of course, all of you are familiar with this game, Tetris, that was invented in Soviet Union, and then rights for this game was sold to Japanese company, if I'm not mistaken, and Nintendo, and well, for decades and decades, no one did manage to crack this game, but a 13-year-old Willis Gibson from Oklahoma is believed to have become the first human being to have beaten the classic Nintendo video game Tetris, more than 3 decades after it was first released. Gibson, who goes to their nickname, I guess, Blue Scooty online, posted a video of his record-breaking achievement online after taking just 38 minutes to reach level 157. before it crashed into so-called kill screen, the de facto conclusion to the game. His score read 999,999. So, well, some genius is living in the US. Well done to this kid. He is part of history now. He is part of history. So great. I did not even knew that there is end to this game. I was thinking that these figurines, whatever they are, will just drop constantly, non-stop. But I just learned from this news that on 157th level, kill screen will emerge and the game is finished. Well, interesting. And now, dear friends, now let me share with you latest report of Russian Defense Ministry on progress of special military operation. I will share with you just main parts of this this report. I did share this information on my Telegram channel already, so let's begin with Kupiansk direction. According to, you know what, let's do this way. So, well, according to Russian Defense Ministry, units of West Group of Forces supported by artillery, Russian Army, units of Russian West Group of Forces with support of artillery, inflicted losses on manpower and hardware of 14th, 21st, 43rd, 92nd and 115 mechanized brigades and 117 territorial defense brigade of Ukrainian armed forces near Novogorovka, Ivanovka and Berestova. This is Kharkov region. Ukrainian armed forces in Kupiansk direction lost about 100 military personnel during the previous 24 hours, 2 infantry fighting vehicles, 3 motor vehicles, 1 Olha MLRS and 3 Czech-made Vampire MLRS. This is very important, dear friends, because if you remember, during the previous days, Kyiv regime was shelling Belgorod region and Belgorod city, mainly with these MLRS systems, Olha and Vampire. And I guess Russian military intelligence went for a hunt to hunt down these MLRS systems in Kharkov region. That's usually the area from which Belgorod is shelled, and Russian forces quite successfully hunt down these MLRS, and four of them were destroyed, and Ukrainian armed forces lost in Kupiansk direction, which is also Kharkov region, of course, about 100 military personnel. Next is Krasny Liman direction, in which units of 10th group of forces of Russian army with support of artillery struck manpower concentration areas of the 100th Territorial Defense Brigade and 5th National Guards Brigade of Ukrainian Armed Forces near Chervona Debrova and Serebryansky Forestry. Well, this is the area that we are talking about. The Serebryansky Forestry is usually a hotspot on Krasny Liman direction, and as a result of this local scale skirmishes, Ukrainian armed forces lost 120 military personnel, also 3 infantry fighting vehicles and 2 motor vehicles. So we can clearly see significant increase in losses on part of Ukrainian armed forces on both sectors, on Krasny Liman and on Kupiansk sectors of the front line, if we compare today's data of Russian Defense Ministry with data of previous day. Next is Donetsk sector of the front line. Units of South Group of Forces of Russian Army, supported by operational tactical aviation and artillery, inflicted losses on manpower and hardware of 10th Mountain Assault Brigade, 3rd Assault Brigade, 42nd Mechanized Brigade and 112 Territorial Defense Brigades of Ukrainian Armed Forces in Sporno area, Bogdanovka area, Krasnaya, Klishevka and Andreevka. well, all those settlements are located on flanks of Bakhmut. So main area of hostilities at this point, last several days, are Bakhmut, area of Bakhmut and Chisov Yar. And as we all know, Russian forces are conducting increasing pressure on Ukrainian armed forces in this area, from both flanks of Bakhmut, from northern flank, from southern flank, and closing into Chisov Yar. I guess it's only a matter of I don't know, days, maybe week also, and Russian forces will establish control not just over the Bogdanovka, but also Ivanovskaya or Krasnaya. It will take, I don't know, a week or two maybe, but eventually, of course, Russian forces will establish control over these settlements, and then, of course, operations will begin in the direction of Chisov Yar and Konstantinovka. And one should always remember that main defense line of Ukrainian armed forces in this sector are Kramatorsk, Slavyansk. That's a main defense line that is left. On part of Ukrainian armed forces from all the defense lines that Kyiv regime was building since 2014. But anyway, let's continue. According to Russian Defense Ministry, as a result of local scale skirmishes, artillery duels, drone strikes, air strikes, and so on Donetsk sector of the front line, Ukrainian armed forces lost up to 190 military personnel, 2 infantry fighting vehicles, 3 armored fighting vehicles, and 12 motor vehicles. In course of counter-battery warfare, 1 US-made M777 artillery system and 1 US-made M109 Paladin self-prepared artillery system were neutralized. Next is South Donetsk sector of the front line. Main hotspots on South Donetsk are, of course, Remevsky salient area, mainly these settlements of Urozhaina and Staromayorska, and of course on the eastern part, Novomykhailovka settlement. And according to Russian Defense Ministry, units of East group of forces supported by aviation and artillery inflicted losses on manpower and hardware of 46 Air Mobile Brigade, 79th Air Assault Brigade, 127 and 128 Territorial Defense Brigades of Ukrainian Armed Forces near Grigorievka, Staromayorskaya, Novomykhailovka, and Priyutnaya areas. As a result, as I said, by the way, Novomykhailovka is eastern part, and all the other settlements that I just mentioned is located on Remevsky salient. So according to Russian Defense Ministry, in previous 24 hours, as a result of this clashes between the sides and Russian local-scale offensive operations, Ukrainian armed forces lost up to 170 military personnel, 3 armored fighting vehicles, and 7 pickup trucks. In the course of counter-battery warfare, one Ukrainian Gvozdika self-prepared artillery system was destroyed. Also, 1 D-30 howitzer and 1 Rapira anti-tank gun were neutralized. Next is Zaporozhye sector of the front line, usually one of the most quiet sectors if you compare it to other sectors of the front, and main hotspot of course is Orekhov bridgehead and especially Rabotina area and the area of Verbova. Russian forces are increasing pressure on Ukrainian units in this direction constantly. And well, according to Russian Defense Ministry, units of Russian group of forces supported by artillery inflicted losses on manpower of 65th Mechanized Brigade and 128th Mountain Assault Brigade of Ukrainian Armed Forces near Rabotina and Kamenskoye, Zaporozhye region. As a result of local-scale operations in Zaporozhye sector, Ukrainian Armed Forces lost up to 40 military personnel, 5 infantry fighting vehicles, and 3 motor vehicles. So, as I said, Russian Defense Ministry's report also confirming once again that Zaporozhye sector of the front is the most calm sector, if you can use this word, in comparison to other sectors of the front. And last sector of the front line in Russian Defense Ministry's report is, of course, Kherson direction. As a result of actions of the Dnipro group of forces supported by operational tactical aircrafts and artillery, Ukrainian armed forces lost in Kherson direction about 30 military personnel and 3 motor vehicle, which is well, quite a decrease. If we compare today's data with the Russian Defense Ministry's report on Kherson sector of the front in previous days, but yet again, yesterday, if you remember, and even this morning, I did said in updates that that Kyiv regime most likely probably will in coming days authorize finally to withdraw forces from Krinky area, and therefore intensity of clashes between the sides most likely will decrease even further in this direction. At this point, even if Zelensky and his associates want to continue this suicidal Kherson offensive, Ukrainian militaries on the ground know perfectly well that they are committing suicide by crossing Dnieper River, and to avoid confrontation with its own militaries, Kyiv regime probably will be forced, Zelensky and his associates probably will be forced to stop this madness and allow Ukrainian militaries to withdraw from Krinky area and to stop all these suicidal Dnieper crossings. And also, dear friends, of course, I have to mention that in coming days, weather conditions will become extremely difficult all along the line of contact, including southern regions. Temperatures gonna be freezing cold, minus 10, 15, minus 20 maybe even. And of course, this immensely difficult weather conditions also probably will have influence on activities of the sites, and we may see in next couple of days, maybe even week, somewhat decrease in hostilities when it comes to direct combat, close combat. Although artillery and long range and frontline aviation, of course, will continue its work. But when it comes to this local scale offensive or counteroffensive operations, we'll probably see decrease in that kind of activity until weather conditions will stabilize. And this is it for now. How long is this update? Almost an hour, by the way, but plenty of news and interesting news in my opinion. And I hope you will find this update interesting, and if so, please click that like button, leave some commentary about any topic you like, and share video with your friends. It will definitely help to reach wider audience on both platforms, on YouTube and Rumble. And if you think this channel is interesting, useful, informative, and deserves to exist in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support my work with small donations through PayPal, buy me a coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You can see links under this video in the description box or in the pinned comment. This is it for now. As I mentioned in the beginning, in few hours time I will upload the next episode of Telegram reports on Rumble channel. And well, that's gonna be it for today. Have a great day, and take care. See you soon.